Hi everybody, I'm Dr. John Douillard, and today I want to talk about your microbiome, something called psychobiotics, where our microbiome is in charge of many of our cravings, our desires, even our likes and dislikes, and how important that is. Now, they used to think that the mind and the brain worked in a linear fashion, where neurons connected to neurons, and it was sort of like train tracks of hardwiring information, and the bigger our brain got, the more information that we could process. One of the explanations of why our brain got bigger during the evolutionary times. But research now says that's really not true, that's not really supported, that our brain got bigger because we needed more railroad tracks to drive more information. They're actually finding out now that the brain works much more in a quantum way, sort of at the speed of light, in a way that that happens instantaneously. And this is kind of a whole new discovery of how the brain works. There's things called biophotons, ultra-weak photon emissions, which come out of our DNA. And they're emitted out of our DNA as information-carrying particles throughout our body. And they're photons, so they're actually very, very subtle. They function either as waveforms or they function as particles. So they really function at that junction between our kind of physical material world and that field of intelligence, consciousness, or the unified zero-point field theories that exist beneath this material world we live in. So the cool thing about biophotons is they function at that place where Ayurveda says consciousness meets matter. And Ayurveda also says that when the matter, the body, the mind starts thinking of itself as separate from that field of intelligence, that's the cause of all disease. So actually having these biophotons be now newly discovered ways of how the body communicates is sort of very interesting, because they also discovered that these photons are affected by our intention. So if we have an intention, like a prayer or something, that they could actually affect the quality of those biophotons, which could explain why prayer works at great distances, why distance healing works. It can explain a lot of the things that we can't measure with railroad tracks, having everything connect. It's much more of a quantum understanding of how it all works, which is really quite beautiful. So when you think about the cravings that we have, we know that the bugs in your gut are craving, sugar. And if you have a lot of bugs in your gut that are really good at delivering sugar, because you've been eating sugar or starch for your whole life, now you have a stable of bugs that are really good at delivering sugar into your bloodstream. We have an epidemic of prediabetes in our culture because we have so many of these really good bugs. Well, now the question is, how do these bugs send a message to your brain that says, hey, how do I get that message that I want sugar? Is it through the vagus nerve, more railroad tracks? Or is it a quantum expression or a quantum desire? Well, we know if you sever the vagus nerve, the message to the brain that I want sugar continues. So it's not only railroad tracks, it definitely is railroad tracks, but it's also something quantum. So anything that has DNA can release these biophotons. And they can be either coherent or incoherent. Incoherent ones come when you're stressed out, and they can actually do damage. But when you meditate, do yoga, and breathe, you actually create what are called coherent biophotons, which makes sense that they are the ones that are more impressionable to intention, that they can be morphed or changed by our intention. So if we know that our intention can affect the quality of these biophotons, which are information-carrying molecules inside particles inside of our body, that actually are emitted and outside of our body. In other words, we transmit them and receive them constantly throughout the day. And they can be the communication molecules for communicating at great distances. The studies show that if you're thinking about going to lunch with somebody, that already my biophotons are interacting with that person, even though I haven't seen them yet. So by the time you actually meet them for the first time to have lunch with them, you've already met them thousands of times through your biophoton interactions. It happens what Einstein called spooky action at a distance, which happens instantaneously at great distances. So this is sort of the world of quantum physics. But something that Ayurveda talked about, very, very, deeply, that as we go more subtle, the effect becomes more profound. And you can't see a biophoton. You can't see a microbe or the microbiome. You can't see the circadian rhythms, but they're all there, and they're governing a whole lot to do with who we are and how we live. So when you think about your cravings and your desires, you're thinking that this is probably your bug sending biophotons saying that I'm not feeling it because I'm not getting, the sugar frosted flakes or whatever it is that you feel that you need. Now we also know that the bugs in the gut change from one season to the next, right? So we have fiber eating bugs in the spring and carbohydrate eating bugs in the summer, which is really why it's really important for us to make those seasonal dietary adjustments. Because if you just feed it with carb, or fiber, or fat, you lose the natural circadian rhythms. Nature has an annual nutritional cycle. It takes a year for all those needs to be met. More carbs in the end of summer, and more protein in the winter, and more fat maybe in the spring to help. And that kind of fat is you burning your own fat because there's no food to be had in the spring. It's pretty austere in the early spring, late winter, and how the diet changes from one season to the next is really critically important, because if you only eat the same food, you end up with a stable of bugs that are only good at doing that one thing, and you overwhelm the body's energy handling system, like too much sugar, too much starch for decades in a highly processed form, which made it super easy to deliver and created a stable of bugs that were nothing but great at delivering sugar into your bloodstream, creating prediabetes. So our response to that culture is like, let's just do a ketogenic diet, eat 80% fat, and screw basically the carbohydrates, which is really not a great idea, because now we're going back into swinging the pendulum into another major extreme. And there are studies show the long-term effects of ketogenesis have issues. Great medicinal diet, and a great diet to do every spring, by engaging in calorie restriction without starvation, to force the body to burn its own fat and change the fuel supply. All the excess you got all winter to store and insulate, you can burn off in the spring by eating less. Fasting, calorie restricting, all those kinds of things. So it's a beautiful ebb and flow, and all these diets make sense, but the goal is that the bugs are sort of running the show. They keep us alive so they can stay alive. And we want to make sure that we change the guard on a seasonal basis. Otherwise, we get too many bugs of one type that causes overwhelm and overuse and imbalance in the physical body. So we have to make those changes. So that's why that's why I wrote a book called The 3-Season Diet. Nobody really read it. Enough people didn't move the needle, change the culture as I hoped. So we put the diet in sections. Every month we put out a grocery list and a recipe list and a superfood list for free every month of the year. It's called the 3-Season Diet Eating Guide. You get it at my website at lifespa.com. It's all for free. And I list all the foods you should be eating in the season. What are the herbs that are happening and what the benefits are, what nature's trying to make happen every season, and really awesome recipes for you to get more of the foods that are in season into your gut in a natural, organic way, so you can inoculate your gut with the right bugs for the right season, so you can dissipate heat this summer, boost immunity next winter, and decongest you in the spring. That's how it's supposed to work. Our microbiomes will be happier for it, because if you just eat the same food again and again and again and again, which a lot of us do, you end up with what are called biofilm. Bugs that are colonies of bugs that just become way more powerful. They're like clubs, or associations that become way more powerful than they should, because everybody in that club thinks alike and does exactly the same thing. And everybody likes to be around people that think like them, right? Well, that's what bugs do too. They kind of gather together in these biofilms that actually can cause real harm, because they don't let the microbial diversity stay intact. All of a sudden we have big pockets of one type and not another, and that creates an imbalance. And that was taken care of in nature by the circadian rhythms of seasonal eating, getting the bugs from the soil to the plant to your gut at the right time, at the right year. So that's the name of the game, guys. Really simple, and that can help solve your craving issues. Because you have cravings, you probably have too many of those bugs that are happening in a quantum way. So boom, instantaneously at the speed of light, they want a Snickers bar, you're going to want a Snickers bar. All right, thanks for listening. I'll talk to you all next week. I'm Dr. John Douillard. Check us out at lifespa.com.